Hello, this is The Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So feedback is greatly important. Feel free to reach out to me, and the means for you to do so will be provided in this episode. So some of the audio platforms that I'm on Speaker, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, just to name a few. So in this episode, I'm going to give all of my thoughts about the aspects of Yacht Rock, as it said, the category, the genre of it, and then give some comments about an interesting documentary that I ran across quite recently. Here we go. So, my thoughts about, and there's chickens. I said this before about listeners to other, listeners. I said this in previous podcasts about we have chickens, so forgive the noise here. So my thoughts about yacht rock in general. So, I equated to the aspects of this of which is really good about music when you get into the heart of the matter. It different genres that's particularly suited for different ethnic groups for the aspects of R&B, soul, blues, and so forth. That can translate to other people, other musicians that are not necessarily typically in that genre, whether it be, white, whether it be Asian, whether it be even Indian, so forth. The scale is grand. And so, particularly white artists, there were some African American artists and so forth, and they were redefining the aspects of soul, R&B, and the depths of essentially what that music is pertaining to. The music is pertaining to talking about the aspects of love, the aspects of making commentary about how people are and their way of being in society, and so forth. And it's really apropos that this particular genre was labeled as yacht music, because the whole I guess imagery of being on a yacht is that you're winding down, you're relaxing, you're having a good time, and so you need music that is accompanying to that, which is this type of genre. Me personally, I like the music a lot. I grew up listening to this type of music, and it also brings me back to the aspects of, I hadn't mentioned this before in previous podcasts. So, being a 90s kid, you're going to be influxed with ads seen on TV and infomercials. And there was particularly that would get my attention. The particular infomercials were about music, and so that was the way you could have CDs and buy it instead of streaming it. So I remember there was this one infomercial that had I think it's Jack Wagner or so forth. He was a superstar, and then he transitioned to being a pop star, so to speak. He did pop music. In particular, the biggest hit that he had was All I Need. All I need is a little more time. If y'all know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying. So with that music, and especially with artists like, and then transition to that, the whole essence of that infomercial, what he was saying was soft rock, soft pop. That was in the essence of what he was talking about, and that infomercial was centering around was these are songs. This is the feeling that you get as stories of your lives. And so going back to a artist that really was part of yacht rock genre, Kenny Loggins, he said the same things. Essentially the essence. This is music that will be the story of your life. Alright, so I'm going to get back with some more thoughts. So I'm back to that when I was saying with Kenny Loggins, when he was saying, he wants he was a particularly interesting artist. So when he got into Yacht Rock, he wasn't just, that was all that he was singing was Yacht Rock. He got into it because at the time when the genre was spreading and getting a lot of progression in the music scene, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the LA scene of music, because that's the bedrock, specifically in the 70s and on to the 80s and so forth, and to really popular music, and that's where you go to become a serious musician. He was seeing yacht rock as a means of expression to, again, really amplify what it meant to be in that genre. What it means is to make commentary about the aspects of the days in and days out, and the aspects of just the epitome of, I guess, chronicling something, And so he really did that well when he did particular songs that has to do with that genre. Alright, so and me, again, personally, I like the sound and the fusion that is in the particular genre of yacht music, because it does a nice blend of translating the aspects. So, when you get, particularly with the aspects of soul and R&B, particularly with soul, most of the time they can run into the aspects of it, pretty much sounding kind of with that same hook where it's something, really essentially hard, the best way I can, the best way I can equate that to is it's just got a hard, either bass, really, really hard bass that's downbeat bass, or it just has, it's pretty much nothing variations of the main staples that you hear with soul music, or it's somebody just singing by themselves, and it doesn't have a different sort of methodic, the melody sort of with the aspects of the types of instruments that are used in the music. Alright, translate that to Chicago. Now, Chicago is one forerunner, and then Fleetwood Mac and so forth. We get into these different artists, and the staple is Michael McDonald. Because when he was really funny, because I'll get into that, but I'll just give you a preview about the aspects of my thoughts about the documentary that I saw. So particularly with the Canadian stand up, or I'm trying to think about that name of that show. So it was like I said previous podcast episode, it was the equivalent to, well, I would say SNL is really owes a lot of respect to this Canadian sketch show. So Rick Moranis did a sketch. He was talking about Michael McDonald, how he, the day in the life of Michael McDonald. So he's going around, and there's so many people. He's in demand because there's so many people that need, particularly how popular yacht music was at that time, that need him to just step in and do, featuring. So that just like with rap music now and so forth, when you would hear a particular artist or you hear a particular beat, that's really popular and in demand. So it was really funny. So getting back to the aspects of everything. So Chicago, a band like Chicago, they were really understanding the aspects of, okay, we hear, we appreciate, we like the sound of soul, blues, R&B, but we want to up the ante because they all conclusively understood that it's a certain sophistication that comes out of these particular sounds of music. And so they wanted to bridge the gap and turn it up a notch to 11, so to speak, and take it to the next level. And Chicago really did that because, especially at the time, when they were like in the height of everything, and then they're getting stronger and stronger as years go on, transition to the 80s and so forth. So anyway, in the 70s and I would say late 60s, throughout the 70s here, when they had the live orchestral accompaniment to what they were singing about, it was very unique into the aspects is if they were unified pieces to really gather the information about what they were saying in the song. So, for instance, the song Old Days, and then you hear that full range of orchestra in the background, re-emphasizing the aspects of somebody going back in time and thinking about what it was like to be at a certain point in their life. And so that translates all along the lines of everything that has came out of the aspects of yacht music. It is really telling the story of just reminiscing, thinking back. And then again, that translates to the aspects of what you're doing with why that was called yacht music. Because most of the time when people are doing something, especially recreational by the sea or so forth, they're sitting back, relaxing and thinking about the old times. They're thinking about, memory, with the aspects of friends, family, and gathering and sharing stories. Now, okay, so the documentary. Now it's a HBO music box documentary, and it had to do with the aspects of talking about and explaining the aspects of yacht rock music. And it caught my fancy because it's apropos because that's it gathers around the theme of what I'm talking about for this summer and wrap it up, and the aspects of how I feel about the essentially when you think about the aspects of beach, being around in a beach mentality. You're just, in a sort of mood that is very relaxed, that is very open to having interpersonal, conversations and so forth. And so in this documentary, it's quite interesting. So it went to explain that, excuse me just a minute. It went on to explain that the aspects of reviving yacht music for what it is to get different generations, particularly in the digital age, of what started out with these group of men on YouTube, and they did a daily show, and it was a sketch comedy show, and they were talking about the aspects of yacht music, yacht rock, and getting an awareness to the music. And that's really neat, and that's really powerful about the aspects of different platforms like YouTube and so forth. When it's done right, it's really done right about bringing awareness to something that has been long forgotten. So, with that, this documentary is quite interesting because it goes into the aspects of explaining that, if it wasn't for artists, the band Steely Dan artists, these two guys out of Steely Dan, if it wasn't for them wanting to experiment and do something quite different with the aspects of where it was going and the genre of music specifically at the time. So there was a lot of aspects with that. So, you get rock, arena rock most of the time that was coming out of the 70s. Critics of rock at that time were saying that, they weren't really, they were kind of selling out, really selling out. This was the notion about rock artists at that time. They were just all in the hype of flash and fame and just, singing songs and, making beds, if you know what I mean. And so that translates a lot to the aspects of how glam rock came to be. But, that's another story within itself. And so, you get the aspects of finding the transition of, you coming out of the 60s and, people want to move on with the aspects of the political awareness of infusing that into music. And so, a band like Steely Dan, they have a greater appreciation of the aspects of jazz infusion, the aspects of soul, blues, and merging those things together, because that's what is very interesting, and which I do have enjoy and have a great appreciation. I do like, and I know jazz isn't for everybody, but I do really enjoy jazz. And so that's why I think it's very understandable why they said it's just so sophisticated, because especially when you get in the aspects of fusion jazz, and that translates to where it be from Cuba, and that be so forth, and how that jazz is an American staple of translating and informing the aspects of Afro soul, but Afro music, and accompanying that with the elegance of the instruments of sounds that they wanted to use to express that, where it be saxophone, where it be the treble, and so forth. And so when you get the album, which was very well noted at Asia, now that was setting the mark from, which I think so personally, from, because I heard that album, and then what they were talking about, setting the mark for, taking the aspects of the genre quite serious, this new genre quite seriously. It wasn't quite stamped with that label, this is yacht music, but again, this goes back to the appreciation of how people wanting to emulate what Steely Dan was doing and translate that to other artists. And even that even goes on down the line to extend out to the 80s and to Lionel Richie and some of his, sorry about that, and some of his music. And that's just, again, that speaks to the power and the influence that music can do. Music can unite instead of, it's more a vehicle for unity instead of division when it's done correctly. All right, so these are my thoughts. I'd like to know what you all think. Feel free to reach out. So this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye for now.